Assalamu alaikum, dear friends. Today, our story begins from a city where nights also became witnesses to the pain of laborers, and days became part of the rule of cruel people. This is a story of justice. This is a story of patience. And this is a story of that Allah whose decisions come late but never come with injustice. Once upon a time in an old city there lived a very rich man. His name was Sarwar. Sarwar had a very big wood mill where hundreds of laborers worked day and night, sweating with hard work. Sarwar had a grand mansion, huge warehouses, and he also owned many lands. But there was no mercy in his heart for poor people. He considered himself the king of the city, and he considered laborers just machines for work. The condition of the workers in his mill was very bad. They would reach work before Fajr prayer and return home after Isha prayer. All day they would lift wood, work in the noise of machines, without caring about heat or cold. But their wages were so low that even 2 meals a day were difficult to get. If any worker asked for his wages, Sarwar would shout at him and send him away. Sometimes he would even fire them from the job. Among those workers there was a very kind-hearted worker, whose name was Bukhari. Bukhari was a very hard-working man. He would wake up every day in the morning, perform ablution, pray Salah, and then go to work in the name of Allah. His wife's name was Rehmat. Rehmat was also a very pious and patient woman. They had 3 children. The eldest daughter was 8 years old, the middle child was a 5-year-old son, and the youngest child was only 2 years old. Bukhari's house was in a small hut near the river at the edge of the city. Mud walls, straw roof, 1 cot, an old mat, and some utensils. This was their whole world. Bukhari worked all day in the mill, sweating and working hard, and when he returned home in the evening, children would run and hug him. But often it happened that Bukhari would return home empty-handed, because Sarwar would stop his wages. Many times, children would sleep hungry, and Rehmat would calm the children by remembering Allah's name. And one day, Rehmat said to Bukhari, "Husband, 3 days have passed, and there is no flour at home. Children are asking for bread. What should I tell them?" Tears came into Bukhari's eyes. He held his wife's hand and said, "Wife, Allah is great. Tomorrow I will ask Sarwar for wages again. Maybe he will give." Rehmat said, "You work day and night. Then why does he not give you your right?" Bukhari said, "Have patience. Allah is watching everything. He will also take account from the cruel ones." Next morning, Bukhari reached the mill. Sarwar was shouting at the workers. Bukhari went near him with fear and greeted him. Sarwar did not reply. Bukhari joined his hands and said, "Sir, 2 months' wages are remaining. Children are hungry. Please give something." Sarwar angrily said, "You people work less and ask for more wages. If you talk more, I will fire you." Bukhari became silent and started working on the machine. The sun became stronger. Heat increased. Bukhari's body started getting tired, but he did not stop, because behind him were 3 hungry children and a worried wife. He kept thinking in his heart, "I wish Sarwar would give his wages," but Sarwar's heart was like stone. Evening came. Bukhari returned home, still empty-handed. Rehmat saw his condition and understood. She said, "It is okay, husband. Allah is great." That night, children slept hungry, and Bukhari cried looking at the sky. He prayed to Allah, "O Allah, remove the hunger of my children. Give justice from the one who is holding my right." And his prayer reached the sky, and then the real test began.
Assalamu alaikum, dear friends. In the previous part you saw how Bukhari was patiently bearing his poverty and the cruelty of his cruel boss, but now the story was going to become even deeper, because when the prayer of the oppressed reaches the sky, then Allah's decision surely comes. Next morning Bukhari again prayed Fajr prayer and walked towards the mill. Fear was fear in his heart, and also hope, fear that Sarwar would shout at him again, and hope that maybe today he would get the reward of his hard work today. As Friday, fear was a lot of work. In the mill, sun was very strong and the wind felt like it was raining fire. When Bukhari reached the mill, Sarwar was already standing there, was shouting loudly at the worker. Sarwar saw Bukhari and shouted, "Bukhari, you came late today, start working, otherwise you will not get today's wages." Also Bukhari said, "Sir, I came as soon as the sun rose, was not late." But Sarwar said, "Angrily, you talk too much, start working." Bukhari became silent and started working on the machine. Day kept getting hotter, heat kept increasing, sweat kept flowing from his face, but he could not stop. In the afternoon, Bukhari's condition started getting worse. His head started spinning, darkness started appearing before his eyes. An old worker said, Bukhari, take some rest, it is very hot. But Bukhari said, uncle, if I sit down Sarwar will scold me, I have to work again. Started lifting wood, but suddenly his body started shaking, his heart started beating very fast, and then her fell hard on the ground. There was chaos in the mill. Workers ran towards him. Samion pour water on him. Samion touched his face, but Bukhari's breaths were slowly stopping. Gone. Worker said, Bukhari, wake up man. But Bukhari did not open his eyes. The old worker checked his pulse, lowered his head slowly, said, Bukhari is no longer in this world. Hearing this, all the workers started crying. Bukhari was lying there where he had worked his whole life, where he had shed his sweet men, while Ramat started feeling restless. Home, her heart was beating very fast, said to the children, stay here, we'll go and look for father. She ran towards the mill. When she reached there, she saw a crowd of people. She asked in fear, where is my Bukhari? But nobody answered. She moved forward, and then she saw Bukhari was lying on the ground. A cloth was placed over his face. Ramat screamed loudly, Bukhari, wake up, he have brought food for ya. Children are waiting for ya. But Bukhari was silent forever. Ramat fell on his chest and cried, and then Sarwar came there. Seeing the dead body, he said, remove this body from Heredo, not disturb the work. Ramat held his feet. Sir, please give my Bukhari's 2 months wage. Me children are hungry. But Sarwar pushed her away angrily, said, Wover does not complete work is not deserving of wage. Ramat sat there and kept crying and looked towards the sky and Shutato, Allah, you are the one who does justice. Take revenge for my children's hunger. Her prayer was so painful that clouds started thundering in the sky, lightning started flashing, and heavy rain started. Workers collected money together and bought Bukhari's shroud. Then he was buried in the village graveyard. Ramat kept sitting on the grave and crying, and the sound of children crying kept echoing. But the story was not over yet, because Allah's justice was still remaining.
The night had become very deep. Bukhari had been buried for some days, but the pain in Ramat's heart had not lessened. She stayed awake at night. She prayed tahajjud prayer and cried while making dua to Allah. Her children also cried, remembering their father. One night Ramat hugged her children and said, Son, your father has gone to Allah. Now our only support is Allah. She looked towards the sky and said, O Allah, you hear the prayers of the oppressed. Give me my Bukhari's right back. That same night Sarwar was sleeping in his mansion. Raindrops were falling on the window and the wind was blowing strongly. It was around 2 in the night. Suddenly Sarwar woke up. He saw a man wearing white clothes standing in his room. Light was shining from his face, but there was anger in his eyes. The man said, Sarwar, I have come with the message of Allah. You owe Bukhari his right, 2 months of wages. His wife is crying. His children are hungry. Give their right by tomorrow. Otherwise your end will be bad. Sarwar started trembling. He asked, Who are you? But that man disappeared. Sarwar was completely covered in sweat. He thought maybe it was a dream, but he was wrong. The next night the same man came again. This time his face was more angry. He said, I gave you 1 more day, but you still did not stop oppression. Remember, Allah never forgets the prayer of the oppressed. Sarwar became scared. But he still did not tell anyone. The 3rd night came. Ramat was crying in tahajjud prayer. There was so much pain in her prayer that even the earth seemed to shake. She said, O Allah, now the limit of patience has been reached. You only do justice. That same night, the light-clothed man came again to Sarwar's mansion. But this time he had a flame of fire in his hand. He said, Sarwar, your time is over. Now the punishment of Allah is coming. Sarwar woke up in fear. But he thought this was just imagination. Morning came. Sarwar went to the mill and started shouting at the workers. He shouted, Work faster, I will reduce your wages. Suddenly, his head started spinning. His body lost balance, and he fell on the ground. Half of his body became paralyzed. He could not even speak. The doctor said, This is paralysis. He may never recover. Now Sarwar stayed on his bed. He became lonely. Even his wife stayed away from him. He kept staring at the walls and remembered Bukhari. One night he saw Bukhari was standing in front of him, exactly like he was alive. Bukhari smiled and said, Sir, give me my 2 months' wages. My children are hungry. For Allah's sake, give me my right. Sarwar started crying, but he could not speak. Bukhari moved closer and said, "I worked in your mill my whole life. I shed my sweat. I never complained. Only my right was taken by you." At that moment light spread inside the room and Bukhari said, "Now you will come with me. It is time to give account." Sarwar saw his body was lying on the bed. He understood that his soul had left his body. Bukhari was holding his hand and taking him away. And far away, the voices of workers were heard saying, "Whoever does oppression, this is his end." And in this way, the story of hard work of the worker and justice of Allah ended forever.